Mr. Bloom, we're going to get started. We have votes that are going to occur. So we are going to be limited, as I'm certain you're very sad to hear, in the number of questions that we're going to ask you. I want to reiterate that these are questions that were given to you on June 22nd, that to this committee, in a seat similar to the one you're sitting in, you said absolutely that you would answer in writing. You did not answer them, and today you are refusing to answer them in writing. So we're going to go through this, where I ask you the question and get your answer.
Congressman, the only clarification I'd like to make is that I believe that the letter that the Secretary of the Treasury, or Tim Massett, on behalf of the Secretary of the Treasury, sent you on November 1st, 2011, did not refuse to answer the questions because of the litigation. In fact, there's a 2.5 pages of response to the issues raised in the letter. But that said, if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
We will submit those questions and answers, because we have them, obviously, for the record, and everyone can see that, in fact, they say this is subject to litigation. But we're not going to waste our time on this.
Mr. Chairman, just one clarification. I have the letter, the November 1st letter, and I've just kind of perused it, but my staff has read it in detail. And just for clarification, you said that he said that it was under litigation. It just seems like there's a lot more to this letter than that. He seems to be answering quite a few things in detail. I just wanted just clarification on it. That's all.
Right. We have answers both in this letter and also letters an answer directly from Secretary Geithner. And in that letter, in those
other
letters, he specifically states, which is, he cited both, and you've cited it previously, an answer of litigation. And this does not answer the questions, but we'll go forward. Mr. Bloom, in the discourse between Treasury and PBGC, what role did the Auto Task Force play in the decision-making to terminate the pension plan of the Delphi salary retired workers?
I couldn't really expand on what Mr. Feldman said. I think that would be my answer.
So you have no separate answer of yourself?
No.
Well, Mr. Feldman indicated that it was an advisory position, and what we would like to know is what was the position of the Auto Task Force in those discussions with respect to the Delphi salaried workers and their pensions?
I think it was what Mr. Feldman said it was.
You're going to do that for every answer?
I don't know.
You don't have an independent answer?
On that question, Congressman,
Yes.
I do not have a different answer. If I agree with what's already been said, I thought it would be expeditious for me to save you.
If you'd answered it in June, would you have had your own answer? There are many that believe that there were significant numbers of conflicts of interests between the Treasury, PBGC, the Auto Task Force, and New GM. Secretary Geithner serving on both the board of PBGC, being the Secretary of the Treasury, the Auto Task Force being part of Treasury, and of course New GM receiving from the Treasury its capital infusion. Did you ever have a discussion at the Auto Task Force the actual or potential conflicts within Treasury and the Auto Task Force with respect to this bankruptcy proceeding and the Delphi salaried pensions, and what was the subject of those discussions?
I do not recall a conversation in Treasury about whether or not the issues you raised would pose a conflict of interest. I do not recall such a discussion.
Do you believe now that they do?
I don't see where a conflict of interest would have been, no, sir.
In the termination of the Delphi salaried pension plans, a significant issue of dispute are the foreign assets held by Delphi and the liens that PBGC either asserted or might have asserted against those liens. Ultimately, PBGC released these liens as part of a settlement in exchange for payments by New GM that did not include the Delphi salary retirees' pension plans, although the liens did. Do you recall any discussions at the Auto Task Force concerning Delphi's foreign assets, the liens, and PBGC?
I do not recall any such discussions.
Do you, would you assert today that those discussions did not occur?
No.
Is it possible they occurred?
I think anything's possible. I do not recall any such.
Did you ever have a conversation about the Delphi's foreign asset and the liens of PBGC?
I have no recollection of having any conversation of that nature.
We're getting pretty far here. So far, we get, you'll give us the answer of the gentleman who answered previously, or you don't recall. Helpful.
I can only testify to the best of my ability, Congressman.
Clearly. There's a significant amount of concern that has been raised about political considerations with respect to the PBGC negotiations and the pension plans, the salaried retirees' pensions, and even the issue of the foreign asset liens of PBGC. Did you ever have any consideration or any discussions concerning the political effects of the outcomes of your recommendations?
Could you clarify what you mean by the political impacts of the outcomes?
I think it's fairly clear. Did you have any discussions concerning the political aspects or consequences of your decision-making?
No, not that I recall.
The United Auto Workers have stated that the Delphi salary retirees should be treated with fairness and equity. Additionally, the UAW stated in a letter dated January 15, 2010, that it supports providing the same top-ups to the salaried workers as a matter of fairness and equity that had been provided to other Delphi workers. You answered Ms. Maloney and indicated that you understand the pain that people have. Do you agree with UAW?
I'm not familiar with the full context of the UAW's comment, but I can answer your question. I can't say whether I agree with them or not because I haven't read that document. I think a lot of people, as I said earlier, have suffered as a result of the GM bankruptcy, and if Congress would choose to help one of those constituents who was hurt, that would be up to Congress to do. I think it would open a can of worms, but it's not but I don't have a judgment as to whether Congress ought or ought not to do it.
Mr. Bloom, I want to thank you for sitting through and answering some of the questions that I had provided you in writing in June 22nd, on June 22nd of last year, that you had committed to answer in writing that you've never submitted answers to. And the reason why I appreciate you sitting here and answering them is because I wanted, on television and on the record, both your demeanor and your lack of answers to be evident. Mr. Bloom, we've had this hearing because you refused for 14 months to answer Sig Tarp's questions. You had to come to our hearing because we have subpoena power. They don't. You come and you say, I will be glad to answer Sig Tarp's questions. Mr. Bloom, you're not glad to answer anybody's questions. You're not glad to answer mine. You're not glad to answer anybody's. And you were responsible for affecting billions of dollars and thousands of people's lives with our taxpayers' dollars. And people are not only hurt, they're angry. And this is exactly contrary to what President Obama promised us with the most open administration, not someone like you, sitting in front of us, unwilling to answer the questions. Now, I want to, Mr. Cummings read the letter. I want to reemphasize the paragraph that he read that is on page 2 at the bottom that says, PBGC, this is the subject, let's see. As you may know, the termination of the Delphi salary plan and its placement under the trusteeship of the PBGC are currently the subject of litigation in Black versus Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp. This letter is not an answer to the questions that I had submitted to you. Then we have, and I'm going to submit these for the record, Secretary Geithner's answers which were similar questions that were posed as opposed to you, where we're just trying to find out how were these decisions made, who made them, so that you can have the appropriate type of oversight over taxpayers' dollars, because that's how our government works. It's open. It's a democracy. You're not playing with, the undiscretionary dollars of the President. You're actually effectuating and administrating taxpayers' dollars. So Geithner had the same questions. I'm going to submit these for the record, and he says openly in the beginning answer that the termination of the Delphi retirement program for salaried employees and its placement under the PBGC's trusteeship are currently the subject of litigation in Black versus PBGC. I cannot comment on the specifics of any pending litigation. And then for the next 8 pages, these are the Secretary's response. I cannot comment specifically on these topics as they are the subject of pending litigation. I cannot comment specifically on these topics as they are the subject of pending litigation. I cannot comment specifically on these topics as they are the subject of pending litigation. And he goes on for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 31, 32, 33, almost 35 questions to answer the same way that he can't answer us. So here we sit. People have lost their pensions, billions of dollars spent. The Secretary of the Treasury won't answer the questions. You won't answer the questions. SIGTARP has many of them. We're going to work with SIGTARP on their processes of trying to solicit from you substantive and valuable answers to the questions. This committee has subpoena power. It has deposition power. Mr. Blum, I assure you we can continue to revisit this with you and your panel members. I would certainly hope that when you say you're going to participate and answer SIGTARP's questions, that it's certainly going to be more thorough than your answers here. Now, Mr. Blum, we're all waiting for a SIGTARP report that's going to tell us what happened. GAO can't give it to us. This process should not be in this manner because of your commitment to the taxpayers. I mean, do we have your commitment that you will work to refresh your recollection, that you will try to answer fully to the your greatest ability the questions that SIGTARP is going to have for you?
I will answer the questions that SIGTARP asks me to the best of my ability.
Mr. Blum, with that, we have votes that have been called. We're going to adjourn the hearing.